Kira ran her fingers along the cold steel of the knife, admiring its flawless sharpness. The German set of 8 pieces had cost a ridiculous amount of money, but in her new kitchen, it looked like a work of art. Each knife had found its place on the magnetic strip against the white tile backsplash, a perfect row gleaming in the light of a May morning. She stepped back, taking in the picture. The apartment smelled of fresh paint and something vaguely new, maybe just possibility. 62 square meters in a quiet neighborhood with a view of the park, no neighbors upstairs. Her apartment, bought with money she had saved for 7 years, working as an accountant at a retail chain, starting as an intern and working her way up to chief accountant of the branch. Every bonus, every salary increase had gone straight into savings. She even remembered the exact moment when the balance finally crossed the required amount, her heart flipping with joy and fear at the same time. "Kira, where do you keep the towels?" Ethan called from the hallway. "I need to wash my hands." "In the bathroom, on the shelf to the right." Kira smiled. Her husband had been carrying boxes of books since morning, tired but not complaining. Ethan was a good guy, calm, easygoing, maybe sometimes painfully indecisive, but that seemed sweet, unlike her ex, who considered every one of his opinions absolute truth. She took a white ceramic sesvi from the cabinet, a housewarming gift from her co-workers, and poured in the coffee. The kettle boiled. The smell of Arabica instantly filled the kitchen. And then the doorbell rang. Kira froze, listening. The bell rang again, more insistent, demanding. "Ethan, are you expecting someone?" An indistinct mumble came from the hallway. Kira wiped her hands on a towel and went to open the door. A familiar large figure in a beige trench coat flashed in the peephole. Barbara. Her mother-in-law stood on the threshold with 2 huge suitcases, one dark blue and scuffed, the other brand new bright pink. Her face was lit up with a smile that made Kira uneasy. It looked too much like a grin. "Surprise," Barbara announced, throwing her arms wide. "I came to help with the move." Behind her, Ethan hovered awkwardly, guiltily shifting his weight. He wiped his still wet hands on his jeans. "Oh, I forgot to tell you. Mom bought a ticket," he muttered, looking somewhere past the door. Kira felt something tighten inside her. Anxiety. Cold. Sticky. Like the premonition of a toothache. Just that morning she had woken up feeling like the world was finally in its place, that she had a home, her own. And now into this home walked the one woman she wanted to slam the door on, lock every lock, and pretend no one was there. But she forced a smile. "Barbara, what a surprise. Come in, of course." Her mother-in-law had already squeezed inside, dragging the suitcases behind her. Ethan grabbed one and carried it into the room. Kira stayed in the entryway, watching as her space was rapidly taken over. "Oh, I've been on the road forever." Barbara took off her coat, revealing a solid wool cardigan the color of baked beets. 4 hours on the bus, then another half-hour wandering around the subway. But it's fine. I did it all for you, kids. Kids. Kira was 31, Ethan 33, but to his mother they would always be kids, incapable of handling life without her wise guidance. "Mom, you could have warned us," Ethan said cautiously, coming back from the room. "We could have met you. Why bother you? I got here just fine on my own. Besides, you've got so much to do. Look at all these unpacked boxes. It's okay. I'll sort everything out quickly. You won't even notice." Barbara walked into the living room, surveying the space like a general inspecting troops. Kira followed silently. Inside, a dull irritation was building, like an itch under the skin that couldn't be scratched. "Show me everything properly," her mother-in-law ordered. "How many rooms? 2 and a separate kitchen?" "Yes, a 2-bedroom. The kitchen is 12 square meters," Kira answered, trying to keep her voice even. "Would you like some coffee?" Later. Let's look around first." Barbara moved through the apartment, and Kira followed involuntarily, like a tour guide no one had asked for, but who was required to be there. Her mother-in-law touched the freshly painted walls with her fingers, carefully but deliberately. The color is kind of hospital-like, she remarked, looking at the light gray living room walls. Feels cold. You should put up wallpaper, something warmer. Kira clenched her fists. She had spent 3 weeks choosing that shade, going to the store, hauling samples, holding them up to the walls at different times of day. It was the perfect neutral tone, one that made the furniture look full and alive. I like it, she said quietly. Barbara turned, raising her eyebrows in surprise. Well, of course, Kira. I'm not arguing. You have your own taste. I'm just saying what's better. Ethan nodded. Mom knows what she's talking about. She has experience. She did her whole apartment in Harrisburg herself. Kira stayed silent. She had seen Barbara's apartment in Harrisburg, brown wallpaper with gold patterns, carpets on the walls, heavy burgundy curtains, and furniture straight out of the 80s. Just thinking about it made the air feel thick. They moved into the bedroom. Barbara stopped by the window, appraising the park view. Well, the view isn't bad, though the first floor is a downside. It'll be noisy. Second floor, Kira corrected automatically. Oh, what's the difference? It's still low, and your bed looks flimsy. Is the mattress at least decent? Orthopedic, Kira replied, feeling something dark begin to boil inside her. An expensive one. Expensive doesn't mean good, Barbara pronounced. Back in Harrisburg, there's a furniture factory. They make beds. You can't get enough of them. You should have told me. I'd have given Ethan the contacts. They went back to the living room. Her mother-in-law walked around the new gray sofa with removable covers and patted the back. Disposable, she delivered her verdict. In 2 years, it'll fall apart. The fabric's thin. It's Italian fabric, Kira said, no longer hiding the chill in her voice. Made specifically for covers. Well, we'll see. Ethan nodded again, as if his mother had just spoken a piece of folk wisdom. Kira looked at him and didn't recognize where the guy had gone, who 2 months ago had admired her choice of sofa, who had suggested gray himself because it was stylish and modern. Finally, the procession moved to the kitchen. Barbara stood in the doorway, scanning the space with the critical eye of a surgeon examining a failed stitch. The layout isn't convenient for a real homemaker, she said thoughtfully. The fridge should have been closer to the window, and the stove here. And why is the countertop dark? Every crumb shows. It's natural stone, Kira whispered, feeling like she was seconds from exploding. It's practical. Oh, come on, Kira, don't be offended. I'm not being mean. I'm just saying what I see. I've got a trained eye. Her mother-in-law turned to Ethan. So, son, where am I going to sleep? I hope you've got a pull-out couch. Kira felt her breath catch. Sleep? How long was she planning to stay? Ethan hesitated. Mom, you're not here for long, right? You'll stay a couple of nights and then go back? Ethan, I told you on the phone. I've got nothing to do in Harrisburg right now. My friends all went to their summer houses and it's boring alone. I'll at least help you get settled here. 2 or 3 weeks for sure. 2 or 3 weeks. Kira's vision darkened. She imagined how those weeks would go. Endless remarks, criticism, intrusion into every corner of her new life. And worst of all, her husband's complete indifference, the shrug and, just put up with it. What's so hard? Of course, Barbara, Kira said, forcing a smile. The couch pulls out. I'll bring the bedding now. That's my good girl. I knew you were understanding. Kira left the kitchen, went into the bedroom, and closed the door. She sat on the edge of the bed, pressing her palms to her temples. Breathing was hard, like the air had thickened. She had just moved in, just started settling, and now a woman had taken up residence in her home, whose mere presence made her want to shrink. She opened the closet and took out a set of bed linens. Plain, not the prettiest. The good ones were a shame to use. When Kira returned to the living room, Barbara was already busily unpacking one of the suitcases. She pulled out a pile of things, a sweater, slippers, a makeup bag, and spread them out on the coffee table. Then she took out something large, rolled up, a blanket, old and faded, with sticky-looking orange-brown patterns in an 80s style. Kira hadn't seen anything like that in at least 20 years, except maybe at a yard sale. "Oh, here it is, my favorite," Barbara cooed. "I take it with me everywhere. It's so warm and cozy. I'll cover your armchair with it. It'll feel homey right away." She unfolded the blanket and, with satisfaction, draped it over Kira's new armchair, the light beige one she had chosen in a Scandinavian style. The chair instantly turned into something shapeless and pathetic, like it had been thrown over with an old shawl. "There," her mother-in-law said, pleased. "So much cozier now. Feels like home." Kira silently stared at the mess. Everything inside her was boiling, but she just nodded, handed over the bedding, and went into the kitchen. There, she poured herself some water and drank it in one go, feeling a cold lump slide down her throat. "This is temporary," she told herself. 2 weeks. I'll survive." But deep inside, where grievances and fears accumulated, a vague sense of foreboding was already taking shape. This was only the beginning. That evening, when Barbara finally settled down and lay on the couch, Kira went into the living room. Her mother-in-law was already asleep, softly snoring, one arm flung out. Her slippers lay on the floor. On the coffee table sat an empty teacup and cookie crumbs. Kira walked over to the armchair. The blanket lay there, as if it had grown roots. She carefully took it off, folded it, and put it in the hallway closet. Far away, on the very top shelf, behind the shoeboxes. She closed the door and sighed with relief. She went back to the bedroom. Ethan was lying on the bed, glued to his phone. "Why are you so tense?" he asked without looking up. Kira sat on the edge of the bed, pulling her legs in. "Ethan, I feel uncomfortable," she said quietly, choosing her words carefully. "Your mom crosses boundaries. She criticizes everything, puts her things everywhere like it's her house." "Kira, don't start." Ethan sighed and finally looked up. "Mom's alone. She's lonely. She just wants to feel needed. It's temporary." "How temporary?" "Well, 2 weeks," she said. "Maybe 3. Just put up with it. What's so hard?" Kira stared at him, at his calm, slightly irritated face, at the way he lowered his eyes back to his phone again, as if the conversation was already over and there was no point in continuing it. "Did you even ask if this was okay with me?" Her voice trembled. "Do you realize I just moved in yesterday? That I wanted to set things up myself, without outsiders?" "Outsiders." Ethan frowned. "That's my mother, by the way. Your mother-in-law. She's not an outsider." "To me, she is." He sat up, setting the phone aside. His face hardened. "Kira, are you serious right now? Mom came to help, and you're giving her the cold shoulder. She's trying for us, and all you do is turn your nose up. Don't be selfish." "Selfish?" Kira felt something inside her snap. "This is my apartment, Ethan. I bought it with my own money, and I have the right to decide who lives here." "Our apartment," he corrected coldly. "We're a family. Or do you have some what's mine is off limits rule?" "I have a rule about respecting other people's boundaries." Ethan waved his hand. "Oh my God, what boundaries? Mom will stay for a week and then leave. You'll see, she won't bother you. On the contrary, she'll help you. You won't even have to cook. She'll do everything herself." "I don't need her help," Kira whispered. "I need my life, without interference." "Here we go again," Ethan said, lying back down and demonstratively turning away. "That's it. I'm tired. I don't want to talk about this." Kira sat on the edge of the bed, feeling an icy emptiness spread inside her. Suddenly, with frightening clarity, she understood there would be no protection, no understanding. There was only her and her apartment, invaded by strangers, and a husband who chose his mother's side without hesitating for a second. She lay down without undressing, and stared at the ceiling for a long time. From behind the wall came the steady sound of her mother-in-law's breathing. 2 weeks, Kira repeated to herself again. Just 2 weeks. But sleep wouldn't come. Kira woke up first in the morning. She quietly left the bedroom, trying not to wake Ethan, and headed for the living room. She stopped in the doorway, as if she'd run into an invisible wall. The throw blanket was back on the armchair. She slowly stepped closer. The exact same orange-brown nightmare, neatly spread out, as if it had never been put away. Kira turned around. Barbara was still sleeping on the couch, wrapped in a blanket up to her chin. Her face looked calm, peaceful. She did it on purpose, Kira thought. And that was the scariest part. Not an accident, not forgetfulness, but a deliberate, methodical return of the blanket to its place. A quiet war for territory. Kira went into the kitchen and turned on the kettle. Her hands were shaking. She took one of the knives from the counter, the smallest one, for vegetables, and started slicing an apple. Slowly, carefully, slice by slice. The knife slid easily into the flesh, and the motion was soothing. She ate the apple standing by the window. Outside, green treetops swayed. Spring was in full swing. Somewhere out there in the park, people were walking with children and dogs, drinking coffee on benches, living ordinary, simple lives, while she stood in her own kitchen and felt like a prisoner. She heard a rustle behind her. Kira turned around. Barbara was standing in the doorway, wearing a long nightgown, her hair messy. "Good morning, Kira," she said, yawning. "Oh, you're up so early, and the kettle's boiling." "Yes," Kira replied shortly. Barbara walked over to the table, sat down, and looked at Kira expectantly. Kira silently took a mug, made tea, and placed it in front of her mother-in-law. "Thank you, sweetheart. And could you make me a sandwich?" Kira opened the fridge. Inside were cheese, ham, butter. She took everything out, sliced the bread, silently put together a sandwich, and placed it on a plate. "Good girl," Barbara praised her. "I can see you're a good homemaker. That's nice. Ethan is lucky." Kira didn't answer. She sat down across from her, wrapping her hands around her own mug. The hot ceramic burned her fingers, but it was pleasant, distracting her from the urge to scream. "By the way," her mother-in-law continued, chewing her sandwich, "I called Melissa yesterday and told her what a nice apartment you have. She was so happy, says she'll come by in a few days with the kids to take a look. You don't mind, do you?" Kira slowly raised her eyes. Something jolted in her chest. Melissa, Ethan's sister, a woman who believed the whole world owed her something and lived with a permanent look of resentment on her face. "Of course," Kira said evenly. "Come by." Barbara nodded with satisfaction. "Good. I told her you have plenty of space here, lots of room for the kids to run around. They're so cramped in their little 2-bedroom place, poor things." Kira set her mug down on the table and stood up. "Excuse me, I need to get ready for work." She left the kitchen, feeling her mother-in-law's gaze on her, heavy, assessing, satisfied. In the bedroom, Ethan was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, squinting at his phone. "Good morning," Kira said. "Morning," he muttered without looking up. She went to the closet, took out a plain blouse and pants, and started getting dressed, watching her reflection in the mirror. Pale face, dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't slept, hadn't rested. "Your mom said Melissa is coming," she said, buttoning her blouse. "Yeah, Mom mentioned it." Ethan nodded. "It's fine. My sister just wants to see the apartment." "You could have warned me." "Warned you about what?" He finally looked up from his phone, confused. "Kira, she's not staying for a week. She'll drop by for a couple of hours and leave. Why are you stressing again?" "I'm not stressing," Kira lied. "I just would have liked to know in advance." "Well, now you know." He went back to his phone. The conversation was over for him. Kira grabbed her bag, left the bedroom, and headed for the front door. Passing the living room, she caught a glimpse of Barbara standing by the armchair, straightening the throw blanket, smoothing out the folds. She was doing it slowly, with a kind of sick pleasure, like someone marking their territory. Kira left the apartment and closed the door. The stairwell was quiet and cool. She leaned her back against the wall, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. But inside her, an anxious, unpleasant feeling was already growing. It tightened around her throat, making it hard to breathe deeply. Something was wrong here. Something she was missing. She went downstairs, stepped outside, and headed toward the subway. Life buzzed all around her. People hurried to work, laughed, talked on their phones. And Kira walked among them, feeling as if she were moving through fog, as if her real life had been left behind somewhere, back in that apartment she had considered hers just yesterday. Kira came back from work around 7 in the evening. She climbed the stairs slowly, with a heavy feeling, as if she were returning not home, but to a foreign, hostile space. She stopped at the door, listening. Voices came from inside, Barbara's brisk, commanding voice and Ethan's obedient mumbling. She opened the door. The entryway smelled of fried onions and something sweet and sour. Kira kicked off her shoes, hung up her jacket, and went into the kitchen. Barbara was standing by the stove, stirring something in a pan. Jars, bags, cutting boards were piled up on the countertop. Everything had been rearranged, shifted, moved. Kira barely recognized her own kitchen. "Oh, Kira, you're back!" Her mother-in-law turned around. "Perfect timing. Dinner's almost ready. I decided to tidy things up while you were at work. Everything was kind of inconvenient the way you had it." Kira froze in the doorway. Her grains, buckwheat, rice, oatmeal, were no longer in the clear containers on the shelf by the window. They were gone. In their place stood Barbara's jars, old, mismatched, with peeling labels. "Where are my containers?" Kira asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "Oh, those plastic things?" Her mother-in-law waved her hand. "I put them in the cabinet under the sink. They just take up space. Jars are much more practical, the proper way. Look how nicely I organized everything. Salt, sugar, flour. Beautiful." Kira walked over to the cabinet and opened the door. Her containers were piled up inside, one on top of another, without lids, some of them cracked. "You broke them," she said quietly. "Oh, come on, it's just plastic." Barbara laughed carelessly. "You can buy new ones if you need to. What matters is that it's convenient." Kira closed the cabinet. Everything inside her was boiling. She slowly turned, scanning the kitchen. Her knives were no longer on the magnetic strip. The strip was empty. "Where are the knives?" Her voice came out sharper than she intended. "The knives?" Barbara turned, wiping her hands on a towel. "Oh, those sharp ones. I put them in a drawer. It's dangerous to keep them out in the open. Someone might bump into them and get cut." "That's a magnetic holder." Kira struggled to stay calm. "It's meant for knives. You can't put them in a drawer, they get dull." "Oh, don't make things up. Knives are knives. Mine have been in a drawer my whole life, and nothing happened." Kira opened the drawer. All 8 of her knives, German, expensive, were lying there mixed in with old forks, spoons, and a can opener. The blades were scraping against each other. She pulled out the largest one, the chef's knife, 8 inches long, and saw fine scratches on the blade. Her heart dropped. "What did you use this knife for?" she asked, forcing herself not to raise her voice. "That one?" Barbara nodded toward the pan. "I chopped chicken, frozen. Very handy knife, I must say. Nice and sharp." "You chopped frozen meat?" Kira felt chills run down her back. "On the countertop?" "Well, yes. Where else?" Her mother-in-law looked at her in confusion. Kira stepped closer to the counter. Deep scratches and dents were visible on the dark stone surface. Her beautiful, expensive countertop, the one she had chosen for 3 weeks, was ruined. "It's stone," Kira said, her voice trembling. You can't do that to it. That's what cutting boards are for. Oh, come on, Kira, Barbara laughed. Stone is stone, nothing will happen to it, and it's so convenient. Chop, and you're done. Kira stood there, gripping the knife in her hand. Her fingers had gone white. Something hot and angry roared inside her. She wanted to scream, to throw the knife at the wall, to shove her mother-in-law out of the kitchen. But instead, she slowly exhaled, put the knife back in the drawer, and walked out of the kitchen. A satisfied voice sounded behind her. Well, there she goes again, offended, Barbara said. So sensitive. Kira went into the bedroom and closed the door. She sat on the bed, clutching her head in her hands. It was hard to breathe. Everything inside her tightened into a painful knot. Ethan was sitting at his computer desk, typing something, not even turning around. Ethan, Kira called, your mother ruined my countertop. He replied, without taking his eyes off the screen. She chopped frozen meat on it with my knife. So what? Ethan turned around, frowning. The meat needed to be cut up, so she cut it up. There are scratches, Ethan. Deep ones. It can't be restored. He shrugged. Scratches happen. It's a kitchen. Everything gets scratched there anyway. Kira stared at him, at his indifferent, slightly irritated face. This countertop matters to me, she said slowly. I chose it for a long time. It's expensive, and your mother ruined it in one day. Kira, what is wrong with you? Ethan leaned back in his chair. Mom cooked dinner, she tried, and you're making complaints over a few scratches. Aren't you ashamed? Ashamed? Kira felt something snap inside her. I should be ashamed for protecting my things? For acting like a possessive control freak. Mom came to help, and you're nitpicking every little thing. Kira stood up. Her hands were shaking. This is not a little thing, Ethan. This is my apartment, my things. And I don't want anyone damaging them. Our apartment, he corrected coldly. We're a family. Or do you want me to feel like a guest here? I want your mother to respect my space. Oh my God, this space again. Ethan waved his hand. You sound like a paranoid person. Everything is yours. Everything is untouchable. Maybe you should just live alone. Kira said nothing. Everything inside her went cold. Suddenly she understood that the conversation was pointless, that her husband would not only fail to take her side, he believed she was wrong, sick, unreasonable. Fine, she said quietly. Forget it. That's better. Ethan turned back to his computer. For him, the conversation was over. Kira left the bedroom and went into the bathroom. She turned on the cold water, put her hands under it, and splashed her face. The water was icy, but it didn't help. Everything inside her was burning. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Pale face, red eyes, tightly pressed lips. An unfamiliar woman was looking back at her, cornered, exhausted, angry. I'm not like this, Kira thought. I didn't want to be like this. But this was exactly how things were, and every day it only got worse. Dinner passed in heavy silence. Barbara chirped about the weather, about neighbors she had seen in the building. Ethan ate quietly, buried in his phone. Kira poked at the chicken with her fork, unable to swallow a single bite. Don't you like it? Her mother-in-law asked. I tried so hard. It's fine, Kira forced out. I'm just not hungry. You should eat, Kira, or you'll waste away. After dinner, Kira silently cleared the table and washed the dishes. Barbara settled into the living room in front of the TV and turned on some talk show at full volume. Kira went back into the kitchen, took her knives out of the drawer, and began placing them back onto the magnetic strip. One by one, slowly, with focus. Last, she placed the largest one, the chef's knife, looked at the scratches, and ran her finger along the blade. This is just the beginning, a voice inside her whispered. It's going to get worse. She didn't want to believe it, but she did. The next day, Saturday, Kira woke up to a loud doorbell ringing. She jumped up and checked the time, 9:30 a.m. Ethan was still asleep, sprawled across half the bed. The bell rang again, insistent, demanding. Kira pulled on a robe and went into the hallway. Barbara was already standing by the door, holding the handle. "It's Melissa," she announced happily. "I recognize her ring." She flung the door open. Melissa, Ethan's sister, stood on the threshold, a large woman in her mid-30s, with dyed red hair and a perpetually displeased expression. Next to her hovered her husband Robert, a quiet, colorless man who always avoided eye contact. Behind them fidgeted two children, boys around 7 and 9 years old. "Mommy!" Melissa rushed toward Barbara, hugging her as if they hadn't seen each other in a year. "I missed you so much." "Melissa, sweetheart," her mother beamed. "Come in, come in." They flooded into the entryway all at once. The kids immediately ran into the living room, stomping loudly. Robert nodded apologetically at Kira and followed them. Melissa took off her jacket, tossed it onto the rack, and swept the apartment with an appraising look. "Well, well," she drawled. "Spacious and bright." Kira stood in the bedroom doorway, watching the invasion. Everything inside her tightened. "Good morning," she said. "Melissa, you could have warned us you were coming." "And why would I?" Melissa raised her eyebrows in surprise. "We're family. Or do you think we need permission?" "Well, it would have been polite." "Polite?" Melissa snorted. "How delicate you are. We're simple people, no formalities." Barbara linked arms with her daughter. "Come on, I'll show you everything. Look, this is the living room. Big, right? And here's the kitchen. And here's the bedroom." They walked through the apartment, and Kira followed them, feeling like a tour guide in her own home. Melissa touched the walls, peeked into closets, felt the curtains. Her gaze was greedy, envious. "How many square feet is it?" she asked, stopping in the living room. 667, Kira replied. "And how much did it cost?" Kira fell silent. Barbara answered for her. "They say 250,000. Kira bought it herself before the marriage." 250? Melissa whistled. "Wow, how did you save that much, Kira? On an accountant's salary?" "I saved for 7 years, Kira said shortly. "Some people are lucky," Melissa sighed, "and we're stuck paying a mortgage on a tiny 2-bedroom with 2 kids, so cramped you can barely turn around." She walked to the window and looked out at the park. Nice view, quiet too. The kids would have so much space here. Kira tensed. There was something wrong in that phrase, some hidden meaning. "Well, Mom," Melissa turned to Barbara. "Show me the rest." They went into the kitchen. The kids were already there, rummaging through the cabinets, pulling out cookies, scattering crumbs. One of the boys grabbed an apple from the table and took a bite without washing it. "Boys, don't touch other people's things," Kira said quietly. The older boy looked at her defiantly and took another bite. The younger one giggled. "Oh, come on, Kira," Melissa waved her hand. "Kids need to have fun. Don't restrain them or they'll grow up all uptight." Barbara watched her grandsons with affection. Such good boys, real little rascals. Kira stayed silent. She saw the older boy wipe chocolate-smeared fingers on the light-colored wall. She saw the younger one open the fridge and start pulling out drawers, dropping vegetables onto the floor. She clenched her fists. Everything inside her was boiling, but she couldn't say anything, because she knew that if she did, she'd be accused of being cold, mean, and greedy. "Where's Ethan?" Melissa asked, looking around. "He's still sleeping," Barbara replied. "He went to bed late last night." "Well, wake him up. I came all this way. I want to see him." Kira went into the bedroom. Ethan was still lying face down in the pillow. "Ethan?" she called softly. "Your sister is here." 1 second," he mumbled without opening his eyes. "Ethan, get up. They've taken over the entire apartment." He reluctantly pushed himself up and rubbed his face with his hands. "All right, I'm coming." 10 minutes later, he came out in a wrinkled t-shirt, looking half asleep, Melissa rushed to hug him. Barbara bustled around offering everyone tea. The kids ran through the apartment, shouting and pushing each other. Kira stood off to the side, watching it all. Her apartment, her silence, her order. All of it was gone. What remained was the feeling of occupied territory. "So, Kira," Melissa addressed her, settling at the kitchen table, "will you show us the apartment documents? I'm curious how they do it these days." Kira flinched. The question sounded casual, but there was an unpleasant persistence in it. "Why?" she asked cautiously. "Oh, just curiosity." Melissa laughed lightly. "We got stuck with a mortgage. I want to see how it looks for other people." "I didn't buy it with a mortgage," Kira said. "I paid the full amount up front." "Wow," Melissa whistled. "So you're loaded? And here I thought accountants didn't make much." "I worked a lot," Kira said dryly. "Sure," Melissa snorted. "Lucky you." They drank tea. Barbara talked nonstop, telling stories about neighbors in Harrisburg. Melissa nodded along, occasionally tossing in sharp, nasty comments. Ethan chewed his sandwich in silence, buried in his phone. Robert sat hunched over and said nothing, and the kids kept running around. They climbed onto the couch in dirty shoes, knocked over a vase of fake flowers. One of them grabbed the chef's knife from the table and started swinging it like a sword. Kira shot to her feet. "Put that down right now!" The boy startled and dropped the knife. It hit the floor with a dull thud. "Kira, why are you yelling?" Melissa frowned. "You scared him. He could have cut himself." Kira picked up the knife and checked the blade. There were even more scratches now. "That's dangerous." "Oh, please, he's a boy, not made of porcelain." Melissa rolled her eyes. "Seriously, do you even like kids?" Kira didn't answer. She set the knife on the countertop and walked out of the kitchen. In the living room, she sank into the armchair, the same one with the cursed throw blanket, and closed her eyes. Breathing was hard. She wanted to run, to bolt out of the apartment, slam the door, and never come back. But it was her apartment, her home, and she wasn't going to give up. By evening, Melissa and her family finally left. Kira was alone in the kitchen. Barbara lay down to rest. Ethan went back to his computer. Kira moved slowly through the apartment, gathering the evidence of their visit. Crumbs on the couch, dirty smudges on the walls, spilled juice on the living room floor, the overturned vase. She cleaned in silence, methodically, wiping the walls with a damp cloth, vacuuming the rug, mopping the floor. In the kitchen, she stopped at the countertop. The scratches were deeper now. One of them was so visible it ruined the whole look. Kira took out her phone and called the company that had done her renovation. "Good evening. Can a stone countertop be restored if it has deep scratches?" "Depends on how deep," a man's voice answered. "If they're deep, it's polishing only. But it's expensive. Easier to order a new one." "How much would a new one cost?" "Depends on the size. Roughly 7,000 to 8,000. Kira ended the call. $8,000 for one countertop because her mother-in-law decided to chop meat on it. She sank into a chair and put her hands on the table. They were trembling. "This isn't normal," she thought. "This can't keep going." But it was going, and she didn't know how to stop it. That evening, when Barbara was already asleep and Ethan was still at the computer, Kira went out onto the balcony. May was warm. The air smelled like blooming lilacs. Somewhere below, kids were playing, laughing, yelling. She leaned on the railing and stared into the darkness. Window lights flickered below, and it felt like in every one of those windows lived happy people, whose home was a place of peace, not a battlefield. Behind her, the balcony door banged open. She turned. Ethan stood in the doorway, scratching the back of his head. "Why'd you come out here?" he asked. "You'll get cold." "I won't." He walked over and stood beside her. "Listen, don't be mad at Melissa. That's just how she is. Straightforward." Kira stayed silent. "And don't be angry at Mom. Ethan continued. She really does want to help, just in her own way. Your mother ruined my countertop, Kira said quietly. Restoring it costs $8,000. Ethan winced. Don't exaggerate. It's not like somebody died. It matters to me. Kira, he sighed. You're acting like a kid. Scratches on a countertop are nothing. It's not worth blowing up over. I'm not blowing up over anything. I just want my things not to get ruined. My things, he repeated with a smirk. There it is again. Kira, we're a family. Everything is shared. Or do you not get that? I get it. But why am I the only one who has to tolerate it? Why can your family do whatever they want, and I'm supposed to stay quiet? Because they're my family. Ethan raised his voice. My mother, my sister, and you act like they're enemies. Kira turned to him. Maybe they are enemies. Ethan froze. His face went hard. What did you say? I said your family doesn't respect me, doesn't respect my home, and you take their side instead of mine. Because you're wrong. He stepped closer. You're selfish. Kira is obsessed with her knives, her countertops, her order, and people don't matter to you. People who ruin my things and act like barbarians. Kira felt everything inside her boil. Yeah, those people don't matter to me. Then maybe you should just live alone, Ethan said coldly, if you're so principled. Kira looked at him, at his angry foreign face, and suddenly understood. She truly felt alone, even with him beside her, even in marriage. He didn't protect her, didn't understand her, didn't take her side. Maybe I should, she said quietly. Ethan flinched, like she'd hit him. Then he turned and went back into the apartment, slamming the door. Kira stayed on the balcony. She stood with her back against the cold wall and stared into the night. Inside, it was empty, cold, terrifying. But in that cold, there was also a kind of clarity, a sober, brutal clarity. This won't end, she thought. They won't leave. They'll push until I break, or until I throw them out myself. She didn't know what she was capable of, but she knew one thing. She wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. The next evening, Sunday, Kira came back from the store with bags of groceries. The entryway was quiet. Too quiet. She went into the kitchen. No one. She peeked into the living room. Barbara was sitting on the couch, and Ethan was next to her. On the coffee table in front of them lay a sheet of paper. Kira recognized it immediately. It was the apartment floor plan, the copy she had gotten for paperwork. Barbara traced a finger along the drawing, explaining something. Ethan nodded, listening. Right here, Ethan. We'll put a bunk bed for the boys, her mother said. And here, a couch for Melissa and her husband. Perfect. Kira froze in the doorway. Her heart dropped. She didn't understand right away what they were talking about, and then it hit her. They were discussing how to move Melissa's family into her apartment. What are you doing? She asked, and her voice sounded foreign, metallic. Ethan and Barbara startled and turned. Ethan quickly covered the plan with his hand, but Kira had already seen everything. Oh, Kira, Barbara forced a smile. You're home early. We were just talking about something. I can see what you're talking about. Kira stepped closer. Where did you get the floor plan? It was on your shelf. Her mother-in-law waved it off. I saw it by accident. By accident, Kira repeated. And you decided to study it. Why? Ethan stood up, shoving his hands into his pockets. Kira, don't make a scene. We were just talking. Talking about what? Kira walked up to the table, picked up the plan, and unfolded it. About how to fit Melissa and her family in here. Barbara pressed her lips together. So what? Melissa has it hard. 4 people squeezed into a 2-bedroom. The kids have nowhere to play. They're climbing all over each other. And you decided they should live here, Kira said slowly. Well, where else? Her mother-in-law threw up her hands. You have plenty of space. 2 rooms, a big kitchen. It's just the 2 of you. They're 4. It's only fair to help. Kira looked at her righteous, confident face. Then she looked at Ethan. He stood with his eyes averted. "Ethan," she called, "do you agree with this?" He shrugged. "Mom's right. Melissa really has it hard. We could help." "How help?" Kira felt everything inside her turn to ice. "Give them my apartment?" "Not give. Temporarily." Ethan hesitated. "Just until they get back on their feet." "And where will we live?" "We can move in with Mom." He avoided her gaze. "In Harrisburg. Temporarily. Save up some money, then we'll get something of our own." Kira stood there gripping the floor plan. The paper crinkled in her fingers. Inside her was emptiness. Icy emptiness. And in that emptiness, rage was slowly igniting. "You want me to give my apartment to your sister," she said slowly, "and move to Harrisburg, to your mother's place, with her brown wallpaper and carpets on the walls?" "It's not forever." Ethan finally looked at her. 2 or 3 years. Melissa will get on her feet by then, find a better place, and we'll save up and buy something of our own." "With what money?" Kira felt her voice rising. "Who's going to pay the mortgage on this apartment while your sister lives here?" "Well, I will," Ethan said uncertainly. "There is no mortgage. I bought this apartment before the marriage with my own money, and no one owes payments on it except me." "There it is again," Ethan snapped, shouting. "My apartment, my money. What, are you counting every penny? We're family, Kira. Family helps each other." "Family?" Kira stepped toward him. "You call this family? You sit here with your mother behind my back, discussing how to take my apartment and give it to your sister?" "No one is taking anything," Ethan yelled. "We just wanted to talk." "You wanted to decide for me?" "Because you'd say no anyway," he barked. "You're selfish, Kira. You don't care about anyone else, about my family, about children who have nowhere to live." Kira looked at him, his red, twisted face, and at his mother, sitting on the couch with a victorious smile. And suddenly she understood. They'd already decided. They had been talking about it for a long time. Melissa's visit had been reconnaissance. The floor plan hadn't ended up on the table by accident. It was a plot, a methodical, planned plot. "Here's how it's going to be," Kira said, and her voice sounded cold, distant. "I'm not giving up my apartment. To anyone. Not for 2 years, not for 2 days. It's my property, and I will live here myself. And if you don't like it, go to your mother right now." Ethan went pale. "What are you even saying?" "I'm saying what I think. You two sat here and planned how to push me out of my own home, and you thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd swallow it." "Kira, calm down!" Ethan stepped toward her, but she backed away. "Don't come near me. I'm perfectly calm. I just finally understood who you really are." He stopped. "Coward," Kira said quietly. "A spineless mama's boy who's willing to sell out his wife as long as mommy doesn't get upset." Ethan's face twisted. "Shut up." "I won't shut up. I saved money for 7 years, worked 2 jobs, denied myself everything to buy this apartment. And now you want me to give it to your sister, who wouldn't even say thank you?" "You're a cold-hearted bitch," Ethan hissed. Kira smirked. Not with joy, not with anger, just an empty, cold smirk. "Maybe, but this cold-hearted bitch isn't going to let you and your little family take her home." She turned and left the living room, went into the bedroom, locked the door, sat down on the bed. Inside, there was nothing. No pain, no fear, no resentment. Only cold, crystal-clear determination. She took out her phone, opened the folder with her documents, scrolled to the purchase agreement. There it was in black and white. Buyer, Kira Thompson. Her maiden name. The apartment had been registered before the marriage. It was not marital property. It belonged only to Kira and to no one else. Kira put the phone on the nightstand and lay down, staring at the ceiling. Muffled voices came from behind the door. Ethan and Barbara were talking about something. Probably about her. Probably about how to break her, force her to agree. But they didn't know one thing. She wasn't going to bend anymore. She wasn't going to endure anymore. She was preparing for war, and she was ready to win it at any cost. At night, Ethan tried to open the bedroom door, but it was locked. He knocked, called out, "Kira, open up. Let's talk." She stayed silent. "Kira, stop sulking. We're adults." No answer. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening as he tried to persuade her, then cursed, then threatened to break the door down, but didn't. He turned around and left. In the morning, when Kira came out of the bedroom, Ethan had already gone to work. Barbara was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea. Seeing Kira, she pursed her lips with disdain. "Well, you really put on a show last night," she said mockingly. "Ethan didn't sleep all night, he was so upset." Kira walked past her to the fridge, took out a yogurt, opened it, grabbed a spoon. "Kira, I understand you feel sorry for the apartment," Barbara continued, "but you have to understand. Family is more important. Melissa and the kids really have it hard, and you have space here." Kira slowly turned to her and looked her straight in the eyes, for a long moment, silently. "Barbara," she said evenly, "when are you leaving?" Her mother-in-law lifted her chin. "I'm not planning to leave yet. Ethan needs support. He's upset." "Then I'll be very clear," Kira said, setting the yogurt down on the table. "I'm not giving up the apartment. To anyone. Not your daughter, not you, not anyone else. This is my property, and I will live here. And if you keep pressuring me, I will throw you out right now." Barbara jumped to her feet. "How dare you? I'm Ethan's mother. You're a guest who's abusing my hospitality." Kira cut her off. "And if you don't want to be kicked out onto the street, lower your voice." She took the yogurt and left the kitchen, went into the bedroom and closed the door, sat on the bed, hugging her knees. Everything inside her was shaking, her hands, her legs, her voice. She had never spoken like that in her life, never allowed herself that tone. But now it was necessary, because if she didn't show her teeth, they would tear her apart. She took a folder of documents out of the closet, flipped through the purchase agreement and the ownership certificate. Everything was in her name, before the marriage. So the apartment is mine, Kira thought, and I get to decide who lives here. I have every right. But anxiety was growing inside her. She knew Ethan wouldn't back down. Barbara wouldn't back down. They would push, manipulate, threaten. And she had to be ready for anything. She opened her laptop and typed into the search bar, "How to evict relatives from an apartment." She read several articles and learned that if an apartment is personal property, the owner has the right to deny access to anyone. Even a spouse? The thought flashed through her mind. She typed a new query and read again. Yes, even a spouse, if the apartment was purchased before the marriage and registered to one person. Kira closed the laptop and leaned back against the pillows. Sunlight streamed through the window. People were going about their business outside. She was sitting in her own apartment, planning how to protect herself from her own husband and his family. How did it come to this? She thought. But the answer was obvious. She hadn't fallen into this. She had been pushed, and now she had to either give up or fight back. Kira came back from work late on purpose, lingering over a quarterly report that could have waited until tomorrow. She just didn't want to go home, didn't want to see her mother-in-law, hear her voice, feel that constant pressure. She climbed the stairs slowly, stopping on every landing. At the door to her apartment, she froze and listened. Silence. A strange, tense silence. She opened the door. The light was on in the entryway. The murmur of the TV came from the living room. Kira took off her shoes and hung up her coat, went into the kitchen. No one there. She peeked into the living room. Barbara was sitting on the couch in front of the TV, but she wasn't watching it. She was looking at Kira with a strange expression, triumphant, gloating. "Oh, you're back," her mother-in-law said. "Ethan's been waiting for you. He's in the bedroom." Kira nodded and walked past her. pushed open the bedroom door. Ethan was sitting on the bed. Documents lay on the bedspread in front of him. Her documents, the purchase agreement, the ownership certificate, the registry extract. He looked up. His face was hard, resolute. Kira had never seen him like this. "Sit down," he said. "We need to talk." Kira stayed standing by the door. "Where did you get my documents?" "Found them in the closet. I was looking for my phone charger." "You're lying." Ethan smirked. "All right, fine. I'm lying. Mom told me where they were. What difference does it make? The important thing is, I read them. And now I understand why you're being so stubborn." He tapped the contract with his finger. "The apartment is registered under your maiden name, bought before the marriage. So formally it's not marital property. So you think you have the right to throw me out on the street, right?" Kira was silent. "Answer me," Ethan demanded. "Yes," she said quietly. He stood up, shoved his hands into his jeans pockets, and paced the room. "You know, Kira, I've been thinking for a long time, trying to understand what's going on with you, why you've changed so much. And I figured it out. You've decided you're a queen because you have an apartment, because you bought it yourself, with your own money. And now you think everyone should bow to you? I don't think that." "Shut up," he barked, and Kira flinched. He had never yelled at her like that. "I'm not done." He stopped in front of her, looking down at her. "You forgot one simple thing. We're a family, husband and wife. And in a family, everything is shared. Everything. It doesn't matter what's written on those papers. What matters is that we're together. And if my family needs help, you're obligated to give it." "Your family needs my apartment," Kira said coldly. "That's not help. That's robbery." Ethan stepped closer. His face was inches from hers. "You will give the apartment to Melissa." "No." "You will." "No." He raised his hand. Kira instinctively covered herself with her arm, but the blow didn't come. Ethan stopped, lowered his hand, breathing hard. "I don't hit women," he rasped. "But you, Kira, you're pushing me to the edge." She slowly lowered her arm. Everything inside her went cold. "You wanted to hit me," she whispered. "I didn't want to, but I could have. You deserved it." He turned and walked to the door. "You have 2 days. Think about it. If in 2 days you don't agree, I'll make you regret it." "How exactly?" Kira asked. Ethan turned back and smirked. "You'll see." He left, slamming the door. Kira stood in the middle of the bedroom. Her legs wouldn't hold her. She slowly sank onto the bed, pressing her temples with her palms. He wanted to hit me. The thought wouldn't fit in her head. Ethan, her husband, soft, compliant, always avoiding conflict, had raised his hand at her like she was an object, an obstacle. She picked up the documents from the bed, neatly put them back into the folder, hid it in the closet on the very top shelf among the boxes, closed the door, and pushed a chair against it. It wouldn't help, of course, but it gave at least some illusion of protection. Kira woke up early in the morning. Ethan wasn't in bed. He had slept on the couch in the living room. She stepped out of the bedroom. He had already left for work. Barbara was sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea. "Good morning, Kira," she said with icy politeness. "Sleep well?" Kira didn't answer. She poured herself some water and drank it. Her mother-in-law watched her, squinting. "You know, I keep thinking," Barbara drawled. "Why are you so greedy? Your parents were decent people, right? Or were they not?" Kira slowly set the glass down on the table. "Don't you dare talk about my parents." "And why not? They died a long time ago when you were still a student. Probably didn't leave you any inheritance since you had to save up for an apartment yourself. Poor little orphan girl, unwanted by anyone." Kira felt everything inside her tighten. Barbara had hit the exact sore spot. Her parents had died in a car accident when Kira was 21. She had been left alone, no support, no money, a student loan hanging over her head. That was why she had saved for so long. That was why this apartment wasn't just housing to her. It was proof that she had survived on her own, without anyone's help. "So you cling to what's yours," her mother-in-law continued, "because there's nothing else. No real family, no children, no warmth. Just you, with your knives and countertops." "Shut up," Kira whispered. "Why should I? Am I telling the truth?" Barbara stood up and stepped closer. "Do you really think Ethan is with you out of love? He just feels sorry for you, a miserable little orphan. And what does he get in return? Coldness and selfishness." "Shut up. And what if I don't? You'll kick me out?" Her mother-in-law smirked. "Go ahead and try. Ethan will throw you out on the street himself." Kira turned and walked out of the kitchen. Her hands and legs were shaking. She went into the bedroom, closed the door, and leaned against it with her back. Her heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might jump out of her chest. "I'm telling the truth." Those words drilled into her brain. Was it the truth? Was Ethan really with her out of pity? Or was this just manipulation? Kira took out her phone, opened her messages with her husband, scrolled back to the beginning of their relationship. "You're the best. I feel so good with you." A photo of them hugging in Central Park, happy, in love. When did it end? When did he change? Or was it her who had changed, becoming angry, suspicious, closed off? "No," she told herself. "Not me, them. They made me this way." But doubt had already crept in. That evening she came home from work and immediately noticed the changes. A stack of interior design magazines lay on the kitchen table. Barbara was sitting there, flipping through one of them and making notes in a notebook with a pencil. "Oh, Kira," she nodded. "Perfect timing. I want your opinion. Look, these wallpapers are so nice. They'd be great for a kid's room." Kira froze in the doorway. "What kid's room? What do you mean, what?" Her mother-in-law looked up in surprise. "For Melissa's boys. When they move in here, we'll need to set up a room for them. I'm thinking maybe wallpaper with cars or airplanes." Kira slowly walked over to the table, picked up the magazine, closed it. "No one is moving in here." "Oh, Kira, stop being stubborn," Barbara said, opening the magazine again. "Ethan has already decided everything. Melissa and her family will move into this room." She pointed at the apartment layout lying on the table. "And you and Ethan will move in with me. Everything's fair, family style." "I'm not moving." "You will." Barbara lifted her eyes. Cold certainty swam in them. "Because you don't have a choice." "I do have a choice, and I choose to stay here, in my apartment." "Yours," her mother-in-law smirked. "You think too highly of yourself, girl. You think just because a piece of paper has your name on it, you're the queen here? You're wrong. Ethan is your husband, legally, and he has just as much right to this apartment as you do." "No," Kira shook her head. "He doesn't. The apartment was bought before the marriage. It's my personal property." "We'll see," Barbara said, bending over the magazine again. "We'll see." Kira turned and left the kitchen. Panic was rising inside her. They weren't backing off. They were pushing harder, making plans. Choosing wallpaper, as if everything was already decided. What were they planning? She went into the bedroom, locked the door, sat on the bed, clutching her head in her hands. She needed to think, to do something. But what? Footsteps sounded outside the door. Ethan's voice. "Kira, open up. We need to talk." She didn't move. "Kira, I know you're in there. Open the door or I'll break it down." She stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. Ethan stood in the doorway. His face was calm, even friendly. Too friendly. "Let's talk like adults," he said. "No yelling." Kira silently followed him into the living room. Barbara was sitting on the couch, hands folded on her knees, like a judge or an executioner. Ethan gestured for Kira to sit in the armchair. She sat down, tense, bracing for a blow. "Listen, Kira," Ethan began, sitting on the arm of the couch. "Let's handle this the nice way. No scandals, no nerves. We're family. Family sticks together. I'm listening, Kira said coldly. Here's what we're offering. You sign a gift deed transferring the apartment to Melissa. She and her family move in here. You and I move to Harrisburg, to Mom's place, temporarily, 2 or 3 years. During that time, I'll find a job in Harrisburg. We'll save money, take out a mortgage, and buy our own place. Fair deal. Kira was silent. Melissa really has it hard, he continued. The kids are small. They need space. And we still have everything ahead of us. We're young. We'll earn it back. And this apartment, well, you got it kind of by chance, really. You were lucky you managed to save up. But that doesn't make it so incredibly important, right? By chance? Kira felt something snap inside her. I worked 2 jobs for 7 years and denied myself everything to save for this apartment. And that's by chance? You know what I mean, Ethan grimaced. Don't nitpick words. I am nitpicking. Because you're devaluing my work, my effort, my life. Oh my God, Kira. Ethan jumped up and started pacing the room. Here we go with the drama again. Nobody's devaluing anything. We're just offering a reasonable solution. Reasonable? Kira stood up. Giving my apartment to your sister and moving in with your mother is reasonable? Yes, he barked. Because you're alone and they're 4. Because they have it worse than you. Do you even understand what it's like to live 4 people in a tiny 2-bedroom? I understand, but that's not my problem. It's my family's problem. Ethan stepped right up to her, looming over her. Which makes it your problem too, because we're one family. Or did you miss that part? I know we're family, but family isn't one-sided sacrifice. It's mutual support, and you're demanding sacrifice only from me. Because you have something to give, and I don't. So that's my fault? Kira stepped toward him. That I earned it and you didn't? Ethan raised his hand. This time he didn't stop. His palm struck Kira across the cheek, hard, loud, painful. She stumbled back, grabbing her face. Her cheek burned. Her ears rang. Ethan! Barbara gasped, but there was no condemnation in her voice, only fake surprise. Ethan stood there, breathing hard, staring at his hand, then at Kira. You pushed me to this, he said hoarsely. You brought it on yourself. Kira was silent. She looked at him, at his twisted face, his shaking hands, his empty eyes, and understood. This man was no longer her husband. He was a stranger, an enemy. Get out of my apartment, she whispered. What? Ethan didn't understand. Get out, she said louder. Right now, take your things and go to your mother. What are you talking about? He said, stunned. I'm talking about the fact that I won't let you raise your hand to me. You hit me. That means the marriage is over. Get out. Oh, come on, Kira. Ethan tried to smile. I lost my temper. It happens. You pushed me. Get out. I'm not going anywhere, he snapped again. This is my apartment too. I'm your husband. You're nobody, Kira said coldly. The apartment is in my name, bought before the marriage. You have no rights to it. And if you're not out of here in 10 minutes, I'm calling the police. Ethan froze, looked at his mother. She sat there with her lips pressed tight. Then he looked back at Kira. You wouldn't dare. I would. Kira pulled out her phone, unlocked the screen, and started dialing 911. Stop! Ethan lunged toward her. Are you serious? Completely serious. He snatched the phone from her hand and threw it onto the couch. You're not calling anyone and you're not kicking me out. This is my apartment. Mine. No. Kira stepped toward the couch and picked up the phone. Mine. Ethan rushed at her again, trying to grab the phone, but Kira dodged and ran toward the door. I'm calling the police, she repeated. Right now. I'll say you attacked me, hit me. I have a mark on my cheek. Proof. Ethan stopped. His face went pale. You won't do that. That's a scandal. A disgrace. I will. Barbara stood up. Kira, sweetheart, don't get so worked up. Ethan just lost his nerves. Let's calm down, have some tea, talk it through. No. Kira looked at Ethan. I'm done tolerating this. Done with the pressure, the manipulation, being treated like property that can be used. That's it. We're done. She pressed the screen and continued dialing. Stop, Ethan yelled. Fine, I'll leave. Just don't call. Kira froze, her fingers still hovering over the screen. Leave. Now. Ethan stood there, breathing hard. Then he turned and went into the bedroom. Barbara rushed after him. Ethan, honey, don't. Don't humiliate yourself in front of her. Mom, shut up, Ethan snapped. Kira stayed in the living room, gripping her phone. Everything inside her was trembling. She didn't know where she'd found the strength for this, but she did it. She pushed back. 15 minutes later, Ethan came out of the bedroom with a bag. Barbara trailed behind him, sniffling. You'll regret this, Ethan threw at Kira as he passed. You'll regret it so much. Maybe, she replied, but it'll be my decision, my life. He slammed the door. Barbara paused in the doorway and turned back. You think you won? You're wrong. We'll come back, and then you'll be on your knees begging for forgiveness. Get out, Kira said, exhausted. Her mother-in-law snorted and left, slamming the door loudly. Silence. Kira stood in the middle of the living room, alone, in her apartment. Finally, alone. She slowly walked to the couch and sank onto it. Her whole body ached. Her cheek throbbed with pain. Inside was emptiness, huge, ringing emptiness. She took out her phone and stared at the half-dialed police number. I did it, she thought. I kicked them out. But there was no joy, only exhaustion. Endless, heavy exhaustion. The next 2 days passed in a strange, numb haze. Kira went to work, came back, went to bed, alone, in an empty apartment. Ethan didn't call, didn't text, just silence. It was worse than the screaming. On the third day, in the evening, while Kira was making dinner, the doorbell rang. She jolted and froze. She walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Melissa. Kira didn't open it. Melissa rang again, then started pounding. Open up, Kira. I know you're home. We need to talk. Kira stood behind the door in silence. Kira, stop being stupid. Open up. We'll talk like normal people. The pounding grew louder. Melissa started hammering on the door with her fists. Open up, you bitch! Open the door, I said! Kira took out her phone and typed a message. If you don't stop knocking, I'm calling the police. She sent it to Melissa. Melissa read it. Kira could see it by the message status. The pounding stopped. Fine, came Melissa's voice from behind the door. We'll see who outplays who. Footsteps moved away. Kira leaned her back against the door, slid down, and sat on the floor. Her hands were shaking. They're not backing off. The thought dug into her mind. They weren't backing off. They would push, threaten, manipulate until they got what they wanted, or until she broke them, completely, for good. Kira stood up, went into the kitchen, opened the drawer, and took out the knives. One by one, she laid them on the countertop. 8 blades, gleaming under the lamp. She picked up the biggest one, the chef's knife, the one Barbara had used to chop meat. She ran her finger along the edge. Cold steel, sharp despite the scratches. I'm not going to be a victim, she thought. Never again. She put the knife back and closed the drawer. She walked to the table where her folder of documents lay, opened it, took out the purchase agreement, and reread it. Every word, every letter. Buyer, Kira Thompson. The property, the apartment at the address. The purchase date, 1 year before the marriage. Clean. The apartment was hers, only hers. Kira pulled out her laptop, opened the browser, typed, How to Protect Property from Relatives. She read one article, then another, then a third. She learned she could change the locks, that she could ban anyone from entering, that she had the right to file for divorce and divide property in a way that would leave her apartment with her. She learned the law was on her side if she didn't give in. Kira closed the laptop, stood up, and walked to the window. Night was dark beyond the glass. The city glittered with lights. Life was boiling somewhere down below, and she stood here, in her apartment, alone, ready for war. Let them try to come back, she thought. Just let them try. There was no fear inside her anymore, only cold, iron determination. She was preparing for the endgame, and she was going to win. The next morning, Kira woke up to her phone ringing. Unknown number. She declined it. A minute later, it rang again. The same number. She declined again. A text came through. "This is Robert, Melissa's husband. Kira, we need to talk. Please don't ignore me." She stared at the screen. Robert. Quiet, beaten down Robert, who probably couldn't string 2 sentences together in his life. What did he want? She typed back. "Talk about what?" "Meet me tonight. I'll come alone, without Melissa and Barbara, I promise." Kira thought about it. Maybe it was a trap. But what did she have to lose? Meet in a public place. Safe there. Okay, Starbucks by the subway station, 7 p.m. Agreed. All day, Kira walked around tense, unable to focus at work, thinking about why Robert wanted to meet, what he wanted to say. At 7, she came to the cafe. Robert was already sitting at a corner table, twisting a paper cup of coffee in his hands. When he saw her, he stood up and gave an awkward nod. "Hi, Kira. Thanks for coming." She sat across from him, resting her bag on her knees. "Talk." Robert swallowed and lowered his eyes. "I wanted to apologize for Melissa, for your mother-in-law, for all of this mess." Kira stayed silent, waiting. "I know they're acting horribly," Robert continued softly. "I tried to stop Melissa. I told her it was wrong. But she doesn't listen. She doesn't listen to anyone except Barbara." "So, what do you want from me?" Kira asked. "Nothing." He looked up. "I just wanted you to know, not everyone in our family is like that. I understand the apartment is yours, that you have the right to do whatever you want with it. And I'm on your side." Kira exhaled. "Robert, that's very kind. But you can't really help. Your wife and your mother-in-law won't back down." "I know." He nodded. "They've decided to get what they want at any cost. Melissa already said she'll take you to court, claiming Ethan has a right to half the apartment because you're married." Kira tensed. The apartment was bought before the marriage. "She knows that," Robert said, "but she says she'll find a lawyer who'll prove otherwise. Or at least drag it out until you're exhausted and you give up." Kira clenched her fists under the table. "Thanks for warning me." "Kira," Robert leaned closer. "Run from them while you still can. They'll break you. Barbara, she's like a boa constrictor, wraps around her prey and squeezes slowly, methodically, until it stops breathing. I know. I've been trapped in that loop for 12 years. Kira looked at him, his tired, worn face, his dead eyes. "Why do you stay?" "Kids," he answered simply. "I can't leave them. If I go, Melissa will turn them against me. I'll become nobody to them." Kira didn't speak. She felt sorry for Robert, but pity couldn't change anything. "I'm not running," she said. "This is my apartment, my home, and I'm going to fight for it to the end." Robert nodded. "Then hold on, and be careful. Barbara won't stop at anything." He stood, nodded goodbye, and walked out of the cafe. Kira stayed seated, staring out the window. Rain was falling outside. People hurried under umbrellas, trying to escape the downpour, and she sat in warmth behind the glass, yet felt as if she were standing out there in the rain, soaked, freezing, alone. They're going to sue. The thought lodged in her mind like a splinter. She knew the apartment would stay hers. The law was on her side, but how much strength it would take, how many nerves. "I won't give up," she told herself. "Not for anything." She stood up and left the cafe. The rain was coming down in sheets. She opened her umbrella and headed for the subway. Step by step, through the cold and the storm, toward home, toward her fortress. That evening, back in the apartment, the first thing Kira did was check the lock. Then the windows. Everything was closed. She went into the kitchen, poured herself tea, sat at the table, took out her phone, opened her contacts, scrolled to Ethan's name, stared at it for a long time, then hit delete and confirmed. The phone asked, "Also delete from messaging apps?" She tapped, "Yes." Ethan disappeared from her life, at least digitally. Kira drank her tea, stood up, went into the bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out Ethan's things, the ones he hadn't taken. T-shirts, socks, a pair of jeans. She folded everything into a bag, tied it shut, carried it to the entryway, and set it by the door. Tomorrow she'd throw it out or give it away. It didn't matter. The point was getting it out of the apartment. She went back to the living room and walked up to the armchair. That throw blanket was still there. Barbara hadn't taken it when she left. Kira pulled the blanket off, folded it, and shoved it into the bag with Ethan's things. The chair looked light again, stylish, hers. Kira curled up in it and looked around. The apartment was quiet, clean, hers. But not for long. A voice inside her whispered, "They'll come back. They'll come back for sure." She knew it was true. She knew the final battle was ahead, the hardest, the decisive one, and she was preparing for it, quietly, stubbornly, ruthlessly. She opened her laptop, went to a site selling locks, picked the most secure one with reinforced anti-tamper protection, ordered it, paid. Then she opened a legal advice site and wrote a request. "How do I protect personal property during a divorce?" She got a reply within an hour. She read it and took notes. She learned she needed to gather all documents confirming the apartment was purchased before the marriage. She learned she could file for divorce unilaterally. She learned that Ethan had no legal right to her apartment. "Everything will be fine," she told herself. "I can handle this." But anxiety lived inside her. Heavy, sticky anxiety. She closed the laptop and lay down on the couch, pulling a blanket over herself. Not that ugly one. Her own soft, gray, cozy one. She closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Faces appeared before her eyes. Barbara with her gloating smile. Melissa with her envious stare. Ethan with his hand raised to strike. "I hate them," Kira thought. "I hate all of them." And it was true. Pure, brutal truth. In the morning, a sharp, insistent knock at the door woke her up. Kira jumped and checked the time. 7:30 a.m. Who could it be so early? She walked to the door and looked through the peephole. A man in uniform stood in the hallway. Police. Her heart dropped. Kira opened the door. "Good morning. Kira Thompson?" the officer asked. "Yes." "You've been served. A court summons. Please sign here." He handed her a paper. Kira signed automatically and took the envelope. The officer nodded and left. Kira closed the door, opened the envelope with shaking hands, and pulled out the document. Claim for division of marital property. Plaintiff, Ethan Hayes. Defendant, Kira Thompson. At the bottom, in small print, appearance required, hearing date. Kira sank to the floor right there in the entryway. The summons slipped from her hands. They'd filed a lawsuit. Ethan had sued her, demanding division of property, her apartment. Something inside her snapped. There was no fear, no panic, only cold, ringing rage. Fine, she thought. You wanted a war? You'll get one. She stood up, picked up the summons, reread it, took her phone, photographed the document, sent it to the lawyer whose contacts she'd found yesterday, and typed a message. Urgent consultation needed. Husband filed a property division claim. Apartment purchased before marriage. What should I do? The reply came 10 minutes later. Schedule an appointment. Bring all documents. We'll handle it. Kira booked the earliest available time, put her phone away, walked into the kitchen, took the largest knife from the drawer, set it on the countertop, and looked at the scratches. "They thought they'd break me," she whispered. "They were wrong." She ran her finger along the blade, cold steel, sharp, merciless, just like her now. Kira woke up to the sound of a key in the lock. She froze, listening. The front door opened. Voices in the entryway, several of them. She jumped out of bed, threw on a robe, and went into the hallway. Melissa stood there with her husband and kids. They were carrying boxes and bags, like they were moving in. The kids had already dropped their jackets on the floor and were running into the living room. Robert was hauling a large duffel bag, avoiding eye contact. "Good morning," Melissa said cheerfully when she saw Kira. "Don't freak out, it's just us." "How did you get in?" Kira felt chills run down her spine. "Ethan gave us the keys," Melissa shrugged. "He's the man of the house. He has the right." Barbara's voice came from the kitchen. She was already in there, clattering dishes, humming to herself. Kira walked into the kitchen. Her mother-in-law stood by the stove in a house robe, stirring something in a pan. She turned and smiled. "Oh, Kira, you're up. Good morning, sweetheart. I decided to make eggs for everyone. Want some?" Kira stood in the doorway, unable to say a word. Her kitchen, her apartment. And this woman stood at the stove as if she'd lived there forever. Barbara scanned the kitchen, her gaze lingering on the knives neatly arranged on the magnetic strip. She stepped closer, inspected the countertop like an expert. "And this is where I'll be making breakfast for my beloved daughter and son-in-law," she announced, spreading her arms as if embracing the space. Something clicked inside Kira. Cold. Final. Ethan appeared behind her. He walked into the kitchen, shifted awkwardly, then gathered his courage and tried to put an arm around Kira's shoulders. Hesitant. Conciliatory. "Yes, honey. I wanted to tell you," he said, looking off at the wall. "Mom decided that this apartment will be—" Kira gently but firmly stepped away from him, slipped out from under his arm. Turned around and looked at him, at his mother, at Melissa standing in the doorway with a satisfied expression, at Robert avoiding her eyes. There was no anger on Kira's face, no confusion, only icy, absolute calm. "Perfect," she said evenly. "Now listen carefully." A pause followed. Ethan relaxed, thinking she'd given in. Barbara nodded in satisfaction. Melissa crossed her arms, waiting for surrender. Kira walked to the table, sat down, placed her hands in front of her. Her voice was flat, metallic, without a trace of emotion. "This apartment is my personal property, purchased before marriage with money I saved over 7 years. It is registered under my maiden name. The purchase agreement is dated 1 year before our wedding, Ethan. Under state law, this property is not marital and is not subject to division." She spoke calmly, like she was reading a work report. "So, Melissa," Kira turned to her, "you, your husband, and your children will take your belongings and leave to the stairwell. You have 30 minutes. Melissa opened her mouth, but Kira didn't let her speak. "Barbara, you're leaving as well. Immediately." She stood up and walked to the magnetic strip, took the largest chef's knife, the same one with the scratches, returned to the table and placed the knife in front of her. Not threatening, just a period at the end of the conversation. "Ethan," she looked at her husband, "I'll pack your things myself. They'll be waiting for you out there too." Her fingers rested calmly beside the knife, steady, confident. "Any questions?" Barbara's shrill scream shattered the silence. "How dare you? Ungrateful snake! We wished you well, wanted to help you, and this is how you repay us?" "Any questions?" Kira repeated, without raising her voice, without changing her tone. Melissa grabbed her head. "Are you insane? We already brought our things, the kids are tired. You can't just kick us out." "I can. This is my apartment. I did not invite you here. You entered without my permission, using keys that do not belong to you." Ethan finally snapped out of his stupor. Kira, wait. Let's talk like normal people. We're family. How can you do this to us? 29 minutes, Kira said, glancing at the clock. Time's running. Kira, I get that you're hurt. Ethan tried to step closer, but she raised her hand, stopping him. But this is my family. Melissa is really struggling. The kids need space. 28 minutes. You can't kick me out. Ethan raised his voice. I'm your husband. I have rights. No. Kira stood up. You don't. The apartment was purchased before marriage. You're not even registered here. You're a guest whom I've asked to leave my home. Barbara stepped forward, jabbing a finger at Kira. I'll sue you for this. For humiliation. For eviction. My son has the right to live in his wife's apartment. Go ahead, Kira shrugged. Just keep in mind, the apartment was purchased a year before the wedding. I can provide full bank statements proving the money was earned solely by me. I can provide employment records showing my salary and bonuses over 7 years. I can provide the purchase agreement dated a year before my marriage to your son. Any court will side with me. You're welcome to check. 26 minutes. Her voice never wavered. Not a single crack. No emotion. Only cold, ruthless logic. Melissa burst into loud, theatrical sobs, smearing mascara down her cheeks. How can you do this? We thought you'd understand. We're family. We have small children. We have nowhere to live. You have a 2-bedroom apartment. You've lived there for 10 years. Continue living there. But it's cramped, Melissa cried. The kids are on top of each other. That's not my problem. You heartless bitch. Melissa lunged toward Kira, but Robert grabbed her arm. Melissa, let's go, he said quietly. Stop. She's right. Melissa spun on him, furious. What? You're taking her side? It's her apartment. She bought it before marriage. She has the right, Robert said softly, but firmly. For the first time, Kira heard determination in his voice. Let's gather our things and leave. He turned and walked out of the kitchen. Melissa, sobbing and complaining, followed him. Kira was left alone with Ethan and his mother. Barbara stared at her with hatred. You'll regret this. I'll make sure you end up alone. Completely alone. No one will want you. No one will love you. You'll sit in your apartment like an old maid and die alone. Maybe, Kira nodded. But it will be my loneliness. In my apartment. 23 minutes. Ethan stepped closer. His face was pale, confused. Kira, are you serious? You're kicking me out? We're husband and wife. We were husband and wife. Until the moment you raised your hand to me. Until the moment you decided, behind my back, to give my apartment to your sister. Until the moment you walked in here with keys, without asking permission. I thought we'd work it out. You didn't think about anything. Kira shook her head. You just decided I'd give in, that I'd accept it, nod obediently, and do what I was told. You were wrong. She walked past him into the bedroom, opened the closet, took out large trash bags, the thick ones for construction debris left over from the renovation, and began silently, methodically shoveling Ethan's clothes into them. T-shirts, jeans, socks, shirts, everything. No sorting, no folding, just scooping and stuffing them into the bags. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching. Kira, stop. Let's talk. She didn't answer. She went into the bathroom, swept his shaving kit, deodorant, shampoo into a bag, returned to the room, grabbed his laptop from the desk, shoved it into the bag. Kira! She tied the bag, grabbed a second one, opened a dresser drawer, and kept shoveling things inside. Ethan stepped forward and tried to stop her, grabbing her arm. Stop it! Kira spun around sharply and looked at him. Her gaze was so cold, so foreign, that he instinctively stepped back. Don't touch me, she said quietly. Never touch me again. He let go of her arm. Kira tied the second bag, dragged it into the entryway, and dropped it next to Melissa's boxes. Barbara stood by the front door, lips pressed tight. Melissa was still sobbing as she gathered the children. Robert silently carried bags out to the landing. 15 minutes, Kira said. She walked past them into the kitchen, picked up the knife from the table, and returned it to the magnetic strip. Each knife to its place. Slowly, carefully, focused. Her hands didn't shake. Behind her, she could hear Melissa's sobbing, Barbara's indignant muttering, the thud of children's feet. Kira didn't hear them. She focused on the knives, on her kitchen, on what remained. 10 minutes later, the front door slammed shut. Kira turned around. The apartment was silent. She walked to the entryway and looked through the peephole. No one on the landing, just bags and boxes piled together. Kira returned to the living room, sank onto the couch, and sat motionless, staring into emptiness. There was nothing inside her. No relief, no joy, no sadness, only emptiness, huge, ringing emptiness. She didn't cry. She just sat and looked out the window, where green treetops swayed beyond the glass. 2 hours passed. Kira was still sitting on the couch. No TV, no phone, just silence. Then she stood up, walked through the apartment, peeked into the bedroom. The closet was half empty. Ethan's things were gone. The room felt bigger, more spacious. She went into the kitchen, took water from the fridge, drank, and looked around. The scratched countertop, the knives on the strip, everything in its place. Her kitchen, her apartment. She returned to the entryway and opened the door. The bags were still on the landing. Kira took one, dragged it to the trash chute, came back for the second, then for the boxes. Threw everything away, methodically, calmly. Without emotion. She went back into the apartment, closed the door, latched the chain, took out her phone, opened contacts, found the locksmith's number, the one she'd ordered the new lock from, and wrote, "Can you come tomorrow morning? I need the lock changed urgently." The reply came a minute later. "I can come at 10. Works? Perfect. I'll be waiting." Kira put the phone away, went into the bathroom, turned on the shower, undressed, and stepped under the hot water. It poured and poured, washing away the tension of the past days. Kira stood still with her eyes closed, feeling warmth spread through her body. Then she stepped out, dried off, put on clean home clothes, and looked at her reflection in the mirror. The same woman, the same features. But something had changed in her eyes, in her expression. Something hard, unbendable. She returned to the living room and sat down in the armchair, the one her mother-in-law used to cover with a throw. She tucked her legs up, wrapped herself in her own blanket, soft, gray, cozy, turned on the floor lamp, took a book from the shelf, opened it at the bookmark. She read slowly, thoughtfully. Outside, it grew dark. The city lit up, and she sat in her chair, in her apartment, and read. Alone. Finally. The next morning, the locksmith arrived. A young guy, businesslike, with a case of tools. "Changing the lock?" "Yes, here's the new one." Kira handed him the box with the lock she'd ordered online. "Good choice," the locksmith nodded approvingly. "Break-in protection, drill protection, about 40 minutes tops." He worked quickly and professionally. Kira stood nearby, watching as the old lock, the one whose keys Ethan had handed out to his entire family, was removed and replaced with the new one. All set. The locksmith handed her 2 new keys. "Try it." Kira inserted the key and turned it. The lock clicked softly, solidly. "Perfect. Thank you." She paid him, saw him out, closed the door, turned the key, and latched the chain. The old lock left with him, along with the old keys that now meant nothing. Kira went into the kitchen, opened the window. Fresh air rushed in, carrying the smell of spring. She sat at the table with a cup of coffee. Her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "Kira, this is Ethan's mother. We'll be back. You'll regret this. Remember my words." Kira read it, deleted it, blocked the number. She finished her coffee, stood up, and walked through the apartment, opening windows. Fresh air pushed out the stale air, letting in light, spring, a new life. She returned to the kitchen, stepped up to the countertop, and ran her fingers over the scratches. Deep, permanent, a memory of what had been. So what? Let them stay. She'd get used to them, or she'd order a new countertop later when she had the money, or she wouldn't. That was her decision. Hers, alone. She opened the drawer, took out a cutting board, set it on the counter, took the smallest vegetable knife from the magnetic strip, pulled a lemon from the fridge, placed it on the board, and began slicing. Slowly, carefully, slice by slice. Thin, almost translucent lemon rounds fell onto the board. The knife slid easily into the flesh, perfectly sharp, perfectly precise. Birds were singing outside. Sunlight flooded the kitchen with warm light. Somewhere below, children laughed. A dog barked. Someone turned on music. And Kira stood at her countertop, slicing lemon in her kitchen, in her apartment, in her life. The only sounds were the soft tap of the knife against the board and the silence, absolute, ringing, beautiful silence of her own life.